Good afternoon, everyone. As was said earlier, my name is Guru. I work for Adobe. And today, I'm going to be talking about what do we see as the future of, where do we see documents going in the future? And what kind of innovations you can expect from the company that brought you PDF. But before we get into that, let's just talk. We did a survey earlier this year, and I just want to share some of the challenges and that typically have come in from your industry in particular. So obviously there's a demand for the ability to do transactions a lot more faster. There's a demand to be a lot more agile, especially because there are a lot of new startups coming up ready to disrupt you. And we've being in the technology segment, we know how startups can disrupt a lot of IT services, and IT companies have gone kaput because of new innovations in startup. And now we're seeing that in other sectors as well, especially in financial services. And so that is one of the reasons why we're saying it's important to rethink the way that your employees work, the kind of experience that you're giving your customers. Speaking of customer experience, even the way you communicate with your customers changed after the pandemic. A lot of people are using Teams now to do live meetings, to do KYC, and different types of processes now using different technologies which weren't even thought of earlier. I already mentioned about the threat that comes from startups, and also the importance of new ways of working. A lot of employees want to work from home, so they're looking at newer ways of working. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And of course, if you've been through the summer heat here in Mumbai, you know that there is a drastic change in the climate, and it's important to be sustainable and also be a part of the ESG initiative, which even SEBI recommends for, I think will mandate for a lot of companies to have. So while we mentioned about the challenges, what is really important here, and just the crux of this slide is that there is a dearth of a need for a lot of technology to come in and step in and help out with a lot of those processes. I'm just going to skim through this quickly in the interest of time. So some of the forward-looking innovations. So you want a technology partner that can provide you with, for example, innovations in accessibility and sustainability, new methods of authenticating your customers, and also compliant with the legal requirements of your region. And also automation is something that we're going to talk a lot about today. Now, if you think about it, out there right now, there are 2.5 trillion PDF files that are out there, right? And a lot of people in my generation think about PDFs as a replacement of paper. They think it's just a digital replacement of paper, but we need to evolve from this thinking. We need to think of PDFs that can do a lot more than just that. So what is that lot more? That lot more is automation. Now there's different levels of automation that users might need. For example, Seema here, who's a claims examiner. She's not a techie person, but she's looking for automation on her desktop maybe. Or Rishi, for a desktop specialist, is maybe looking at automation with low-code examples, right? And similarly, Raj, who's maybe a part of the IT team, will look for automation using APIs and things like that. So different levels of automation requirements, and Adobe caters to all of these kind of personas. So for example, for Seema, who's working on claims, who's an examiner for claims, she can work with Acrobat. She can do things like compare documents and things like that. She can also work on Acrobat for automating a lot of tasks by setting up actions and whatnot. She can also work on, in order to get signatures, let's say from customers. Instead of sending it one by one, she can use a bulk send option where she sends it to 1,000 customers in one single go in order to get her documents signed or claim signed or whatever it is. Similarly, we have a great story with Microsoft as well. So we've got ready-made templates, for example, Power Automate to automatically archive documents, digital documents, extract information from documents, and so on and so forth. And this is a low-code, no-code example. So literally anybody can come in here and set up their own workflow and personalize their own automation to an extent. So And within Teams as well, I mentioned this during the presentation. If you're in Teams and you're talking to a customer virtually and you'd like to, let's say, transact, get a document signed, use our integration with MS Teams to send out a document to get signed directly from within Teams itself. Look at your customer signing it, verify their documents, and thereby complying with the regulatory requirements. You can set up flows like this within MS Flow in order to guide how you want your purchase order or claims document to go between different stakeholders. So a lot of this can be designed by people without knowing any code. And I think this is going to be the future now of many employees in financial services, is being able to do a lot of this work themselves rather than relying on SIs or other vendors to come in and build bespoke integrations and solutions. So, and of course, for someone looking at complete automation, we have a whole suite of APIs available. So what we're doing is we are exposing our Acrobat features via APIs so you can embed it within any application of your choice. Whether it is for generating documents in this way, whether it is for embedding your claim forms. Many times when you have a PDF, I'm sure all of you have got your annual reports on your website. The typical requirement, or maybe brochures for your products on your website. And a typical requirement is if it's a PDF file, you have to download that PDF. But what we're trying to do now is embed the PDF within the browser itself so that we can give you analytics. We can tell you how much time did some customer spend on a certain page in your form or a brochure or whatever the document is, right? Things like that. We can get a lot of insights if your documents are hosted using our PDF embed API. And then we also have APIs similarly for generating documents. So if you want to generate documents on the fly, generate agreements on the fly, contracts on the fly, we've got an ability to do that as via APIs as well. Where we're using artificial intelligence, we have our own platform called Adobe Sensei, and we're using Sensei to extract information from contracts. Let's say scan documents, your archive documents that you've scanned and uploaded. It can automatically extract information and populate it in any business intelligence systems that you're using on an Excel sheet or something like that, right? So a lot of that capability also exists here. So across your entire organization, these are the different use cases that we are helping customers with right now. Right from banking all the way to procurement, finance, HR, across the organization, wherever paper is being used, we can help you digitize it and get more insights from it rather than still relying on paper. We just recently onboarded a bank here in Mumbai who sent us a picture of their conference room completely filled with settlement letters, right? So that is exactly the kind of problem we're trying to avoid with this solution. And of course, we are just the plumbing. What goes in there, the different types of authentication based on the process that you're doing. We've also tied up with NSDL and UIDAI in order to offer Aadhaar-based signatures, thereby making them valid here, and all data resides here in India, in Mumbai, in AWS Shard here in Mumbai. So we are there to be the data governance policies as well. And so in terms of, I'm not going to get into this in too much details, I'm almost out of time, but this is the requirements by our Indian IT Act on what would constitute a legal electronic signature or digital signature in India. There are 5 points there on the right, and we comply with all of those 5 points to ensure that we, yes sir? Sir, there are different options. If you're talking about the scribble sign that's available in Reader, which allows you to just scribble your signature, is that? No, not the scribble one. Like, there's an option that you can just go and protect the document. Okay. So what you're referring to is digital signatures. So we do support digital signatures as well. In fact, we are currently rolling out an option for you to automatically digitally sign a bunch of documents. So that's coming out soon. But to answer your question, yeah, that is also, but the problem is without the DSC. So the way that we manage without the DSC is we do the binding of the certificate and the document in the cloud, so you don't have to do it on the device. That's the problem. That was the limitation with digital signatures, which is why it didn't evolve further, because digital signatures requires you to be on your laptop, desktop with a USB dongle in order to get your process completed. But with electronic signatures, you could be on any device. Heck, even if you're refrigerator has a browser in it, you can still use that to get your signatures. That's all that's needed, really. So what happens is, the way that we authenticate the user with for cloud-based digital signatures is UIDI, as soon as you put your virtual ID number, they will send you an OTP. You enter that OTP, that's how we know that you're the right person who's signing it. And then that's how UIDI will then send us a certificate against that authentication to then authenticate and certify your signature.
But there is an option that you go and create a signature also in Adobe, right?
Yes.
And does that require an authentication done one time?
That is where you're creating your own certificate. Yeah, but that wouldn't, you could, well, depends on what your use case is again. But if it's any regulated use case, then you would be better off using, the digital signature option from UIDI, and we also use eMudra as a way to, one of the requirements here you see is that any alteration to the affixed e-sign must be detectable, right? So what this means is that if that document that has been signed digitally, if it has been modified, tampered with, some kind of fraud that's happened on it, there should be a way to detect, to tell. And so what we do is we put a ribbon, a blue ribbon on top of the document that is our guarantee that this document has not been modified or tampered with in any shape or form. And you don't get that blue ribbon when you sign it using the digital signature, your own signature. That comes in from a certifying authority. In our case, that's eMudra. Sure. So this slide talks about how we comply with the electronic signature needs here in India and why it matters. And we spoke about some of the points here to prevent fraud. Customer experience is much better. You don't have to ask the customer to come to your branch or meet up with your representative. We're right now helping a bank, like I mentioned earlier, completely digitize the settlement process, so they don't need to send their agents to the customer's place. They can just send out a transaction via SMS. The customer then acknowledges that they need to pay, and they pay over. They send that acknowledgement, and then that's it. That's how they digitize a lot of that process. Employee productivity for all internal processes also, you can help improve the employee experience, thereby having less frustrated employees, and probably it can help you with retention as well. And compliance, we mentioned about how certain processes require you to be compliant. And so in certain processes, you can use electronic signatures. Like in HR, for example, offer letter, electronic signatures are good enough. But if it's a claims document or an onboarding document, it better be electronic, a digital signature using Aadhaar or something of that sort. So that was my presentation. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.